Hello, today we're going to install a new Everbilt jet well pump and replace an old one. This is relatively an easy installation and we're going to lead you through every step of the way. There's also a use and care manual that's included with the pump as a reference. If you need additional support, we have an 800 number that you can call for professional service. This is a deep well installation video on wells that are 25 to 70 feet. If you have a shallow well up to 25 feet, you'll want to go to the shallow well video. Refer to the list at the end of this video for additional materials and tools needed for the installation. You'll see that your convertible jet pump is pre-wired at 230 volt, but this pump can also be wired for 115 volt. So as you understand which voltage you're going to need, to change the voltage to 115, we simply take this top cover off, and we remove it. There's a selector switch, which you can see is already set to 230 volt single phase. To convert this to 115 volt, simply slide the switch. You'll see it now says 115 volt. We can replace the cover, and this pump is now operational for 115 volt. Now that we've determined that the depth of your well is greater than 25 feet, we need to convert this shallow jet well to a deep well pump. And the reason why we do that is we're going to take this ejector off of this pump, and this is going to go into the well. The ejector will help to push water into the pump rather than pull it. So what we're going to do is we're going to start removing this ejector, and it's very simple. You're going to take an adjustable wrench, loosen these screws here, and we have one on each side. Use caution when you're removing it. There's some gaskets and it is a little heavy. Then you're going to pull it straight out. There's a gasket that holds that in place. You're not going to need that. You're going to set that off to the side. This is a venturi that's designed for the shallow well that's inside this ejector. We're going to remove this one simply by unscrewing it, and this is the ejector. And we're going to put in a longer ejector that's going to go into the deep well pipe. And you simply just slide that in to the ejector and you're going to tighten it back down. And as you can see, nice and good and tight. So this is going to go into the well itself. Our pump now has been converted to a deep well pump. If there's any questions related to this, you can also go to the use and care guide, and there's a detailed explanation of how to do this. Now we're ready to remove the old deep well jet pump. So first things you want to make sure you do is follow all local and state codes so that we make sure that we're in compliance. The next step is make sure you shut off all electricity to the pump. And you can do that by either shutting off the house breaker or the disconnect. But make sure there's no electrical power coming to the pump. You also want to shut off all water going to the pump and coming out of the pump. So if you have a shut-off valve, just shut the water off to make sure nothing's getting through. The next thing we want to do, the next step, is we want to remove these plugs here to remove pressure from the pump. And simply use a pipe wrench to remove it. And that'll relieve pressure in the pump. And then the next thing is, we have a drain plug here. Make sure you have a cup so that you can catch the water. Simply remove the drain plug, allow the water to drain out of the housing. You can put that back in. And now we're ready to start removing the pipe. To remove the pipe, you should have a disconnect that's here. And this will remove to the tank. Simply unthread it. You might have to have a pipe wrench to do that. And we'll disconnect it there. The next step is to remove it from the deep well pipes coming into the home. And for simulation purposes, we've set up this assembly. You simply remove the intake, and you'll remove the lower portion. And these are all going, and they have water in the piping, so they're all going to the well. Once you've done that, you should be able to disconnect it. Now that we disconnected the piping, we have one last step, and that's to remove the pressure switch, the electric wires to the pressure switch. So we're going to simply take this nut loose, and that should unthread. And we have two wires that will come in. That's your incoming power along with the ground. You'll simply remove those wires from those screws. Now we've removed the electricity from this pump, we can now install the new one. So we're going to remove this out of the way. Now that we've assembled the ejector and the venturi together, I'm actually going to simulate how you would put this into the deep well. And so for illustration purposes, we've set up a piece of pipe. This already has Teflon tape on each end. You're going to thread this directly into the ejector. And we're going to make sure it's good and tight. These fittings here should have already been glued. Then we're going to put our foot valve in. And this foot valve will actually keep water in the distance of the pipe. Now remember, this deep well can be up to depths of 70 feet. So we want to make sure that we put in a new foot valve to hold the water in the pipe so it doesn't go back into the well. And we're going to make sure we tighten that down with a good pipe wrench. So everything should be good and tight. Now it's time to install the discharge piping up to the pump. And how that's going to work is we're going to start with a small fitting here that I've already assembled and an 1.25" fitting. The 1.25" fitting is going to go right over top of the venturi. Just be careful when you install it. And it's going to thread right into the ejector. And again, with Teflon tape already there. And make sure it's nice and tight. Then we're going to install the 1" piping. And a 1" piping is going to go directly into the ejector and thread in as well. And your assembly will look something very similar to this. Now, remember, this is a small portion for simulation purposes. This could be as deep as 70 feet. So you want to make sure that you, as you're going to install this into the well pipe, that you have something to hold it on so you can clamp it to keep it from falling in the well. Because if it falls into a well, you've got a real issue. So you want to make sure everything's good and tight, and you're going to drop it right into the well. And this is kind of the assembly that's going to be going to the deep well pump. We're ready to install the brand new deep well jet pump. So to do this, again, make sure you've read the use care manual, and we're going to set this up. I've already created some additional piping that, to save time so you can see, this will be going to the deep well piping. So if you remember, we removed this earlier. Turn this here. And the first thing we want to do is install the 1" pipe. I've already put Teflon tape on this, so you want to make sure that you get it good and sealed so we don't get any air leaks whatsoever. The next step is to install the 1¼ and this is going to be going to the intake of the pump. Once those are done, now we're ready to install it onto the well assembly. And very simply, we're just going to adjust it to make sure that it fits. All the fittings are there, and make our connections. We want to make sure everything is good and tight and that all the fittings are secure. We want to make sure there's no leakage whatsoever. So now there's one additional thing we need to do. Because this pump was shipped as a shallow jet well pump and we converted it to a deep well, there's a couple of things we need to remove. One of them is this vent tube that's coming from the pressure switch. We need to remove this plug here. You'll simply squeeze that, pull the tube off. Using a pipe wrench, we're going to loosen this. This is actually going to go into a pressure regulator, which is included in the box of the convertible jet. We're going to thread that in there, and this is going to sit this off to the side because we'll use it in a moment. And next thing we need to do is install the pressure switch. It's going to go exactly into the same place. I've already put Teflon tape on it to thread it into the new converted deep well pump. So once we've done that, this portion of the piping is completed up to the well. We now need to prime it. So we're going to fill this housing completely with water and allow the water to come all the way through the pipe. And we're also, if we need to, remember this is our connection for the deep well piping, we'll fill it up with water as well so that the pump is completely ready for priming. Now that we've primed the pump with water, you want to make sure you look down into the housing to see if there's any bubbles coming up. If you see any bubbles, that means there could be air in the piping. You want to make sure it's completely secure, everything's tight, but we should be able to see the water just standing still right at the top of the pump. So if that's done, now we're ready to install the pressure regulator. Again, this is used for the deep well installation. Pressure regulator, we're going to thread it directly into the top of the pump. And you want to use an adjustable wrench or pipe wrench to get a good secure fit. and I use Teflon tape to make sure it's sealed up. I went ahead and added that. The next thing you want to do is add the pressure switch tubing to the bottom of the fitting, and it's going to squeeze on there that way, and then you can actually pull that up. And so this should be good and tight, secure. Make sure there's no kinks or bends in this piping, this tubing. If you do, then you could have a problem with the pressure switch acting erratically. So you want to make sure that's good and connected. Everything there is strong and tight. The next step we're going to do is install the piping going to the tank. And I've already created an assembly through by using the exact piping that we had before to take out the old pump. And so we're going to put that onto this device and thread it in good and tight. Again, you should use cleaner and glue on the male fitting. The same thing here. We're going to be using glue and cleaner to make sure that it's good and secure. And the last step will be connecting this unit to the tank. And we have a slip fitting that we've used before. We're going to slide that there, and it should be able to connect nice and easily. And again, by using the existing pipe information, the links and everything, you should get a good fit. So use that as the old piping as a guide. Make sure it's good and tight. Check everything. Make sure everything is good and tight and sealed. Again, no air leaks. The next step will be we're going to have to connect electricity. To do this, you simply remove this cap here. And so this is now exposed the inside of the pressure switch. I went ahead and pre-installed the grommet. The grommet's going to snap in here, but first we want to make sure we hook up the ground wire. And the ground wire is going to hook right into the ground pin at the bottom and screw that in good and tight. Then you have two wires here from the electrical house. And the second wire now will complete our connection on the electrical side. And always remember to check your electrical code for state and local requirements and seek electrician help if needed. Now we're going to simply put the grommet in to make sure we have a good tight seal. We don't want anything getting inside there. And we install the cap. And the pump is now ready for electricity. Now that our electrical is connected, everything's ready to go, and we can start to test the pump. Again, make sure that when you're checking the electricity of your pump that you truly do have a 230 volt system. The pump is pre-wired 230 volt. If it is 115 volt, go through the steps given earlier on how to convert the pump to 115 volt. So everything's ready to go. We want to again make sure that all the connections are tight, the electricity is connected, and all the tubes and things are ready to go, and that we have no air leaks whatsoever. Now, how we're going to prime the pump and test the pump to make sure everything's working, we're going to go and open up a faucet, about a quarter of a turn. That will leave air out of the system, and we're going to turn the pump on, turn the electricity on, and the pump should run and prime. Thank you for watching this installation video. And if you followed the steps properly, congratulations, you are up and running. For additional information, you can reference your use and care manual that was provided with the product.